Michael Smith. Welcome to the Field Position Battle. This is the podcast for football fans who are looking for thoughtful and insightful coverage of the game. Thank you for checking it out. I hope you'll come along for the ride with me on this podcast. This is the first episode, and we're previewing Super Bowl 56. So, not a bad way to start off, but we're going to take you all through the off-season, through training camp, and into next season as well. So I hope you'll come along, subscribe on your favorite podcasting app, subscribe on YouTube. I'm on YouTube where you can come and watch the show. You can see my wheels turning in my head as I'm talking through things, and hopefully we'll all have a good time together. So please check that out, whether podcasting or YouTube. But let's get into it right now. Super Bowl 56, the Rams and the Bengals. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. And I don't know who's going to win this football game. Everything says Rams to me. My head says Rams. I just look at how talented this team is and just how they have the ability to thoroughly dominate anybody on both sides of the ball. We saw it for first 3 quarters pretty much of the Tampa Bay game. But they also have the ability to not do that. You saw what they did against San Francisco. They really tried to give that game away in the NFC Championship game. They did give a very similar game away just a few weeks before that in Week 18 of the regular season. They're an extremely talented football team, but they don't always bring their best game. And if they do that in the Super Bowl on Sunday, there's something about this Cincinnati team, man. They're in my heart. That a little bit in my gut as well is telling me to pick Cincinnati because they're just a magical football team. There's something about this guy, Joey B, man. Number 9 under center. We saw it at LSU. We saw it, throughout these playoffs. There's magic in that right arm. He's a different kind of guy. He is a different kind of quarterback. He just doesn't blink. And I don't know how to quantify that. Like everything I look at, stats and all these things that are quantifiable, the edge goes to LA. But there's just that unquantifiable, if they make a mistake, if they let the Bengals stay in this game, I have a hard time seeing the Bengals not being able to pull it out and bring the Lombardi Trophy back to Cincinnati. So I do want to get into some of the insights, some of the thoughts that are going into picking this football game. So I'm going to start looking at this article from Vincent Verhey, footballoutsiders.com. There's going to be a link in the show notes in the YouTube description. And I don't want to, fully break down the whole article, but basically what Vincent does in this article is he takes the worst 4 games that LA played all year by DVOA. If you don't know what DVOA is, it's essentially like WAR in baseball. It just kind of calculates how you would do against your average opponent, and it ranks all the teams. It ranks basically every game, and just gives you an idea of how a team would have performed against an average opponent, or a player against an average opponent. And it just is supposed to quantify, how a team would perform against, say, the Los Angeles Rams or against the New York Jets or the Jacksonville Jaguars, or, pick a bad team. And how we all know this, that beating the Jets 40-0 and beating the Rams 40-0. Two totally different things. One is much more impressive than the other. So Vincent takes these 4 games, the 4 worst games that LA played all year long, and basically tries to find what went wrong in these 4 games. What caused them to be the worst 4 games that the Rams played all year, and how Cincinnati can use that to set up their game plan for Sunday. And a couple of things stand out in this article is the reason I'm shouting it out. First off, these games took place in Week 4, Week 5, Week 9, and Week 10. You know what happened after Week 10? The Rams got Odell Beckham and Von Miller. 2 pretty important players on both sides of the ball that have really elevated this team. The Rams had their bye. They brought in these 2 guys. And that was a massive difference maker for this team. Odell Beckham just completely changes the way you have to game plan for them defensively. They have Cooper Kupp, who just had one of the best seasons that a wide receiver has ever had in this league. And now they have Odell Beckham, who's just a game-changing wide receiver when he's engaged. And he's certainly engaged. He's certainly going to be engaged in the Super Bowl. And it's just really opened things up for Kupp. It's opened things up for Odell being the second option. It's opened things up in, the run game. And when everything is clicking for LA offensively, it's carte blanche. They can do whatever they choose. You look at the NFC Championship, or NFC Conference Championship game, both Kupp and Odell went for over 100 yards. That's not something that just happens. That's a really good offensive game for the Rams, and that's something they're definitely going to be looking to duplicate on Sunday in the Super Bowl. Von Miller takes a little bit of pressure off Aaron Donald, and if he doesn't take pressure off Aaron Donald, if you're still doubling, if you're still tripling Aaron Donald, Von Miller's going to have a really good chance to get to the quarterback, which is something that Cincinnati has struggled with. We saw them just a couple weeks ago in Tennessee win a game in which Joe Burrow was sacked 9 times. Joe Burrow gets sacked 9 times again. They're not winning this football game. So that's a big deal, a big thing. Their worst games all took place before Odell and Von Miller were really integrated into this team. The other thing that stands out in this article, Matt Stafford threw a lot of interceptions in those 4 games. 6 of his 17 interceptions, which led the league, came in these 4 games. Matthew Stafford, he's not just prone to throwing interceptions. He's not just prone to turning the ball over. He throws massive interceptions. When he gets picked off, it's usually game-changing. Look at what happened in the NFC Championship game. He threw that interception that should have been caught by the San Francisco safety. That could have iced the game right there. That was in the 4th quarter. They could have been home right now. We could be talking about Cincinnati versus San Francisco. He tried to throw that game away. He has the potential to single-handedly keep Cincinnati in this game by throwing those kinds of interceptions. Unfortunately, as good a player as he has been, and I am a believer that he has been a good player for 13 years now in this league, and I'm happy for him that he's getting this opportunity, he can be his own worst enemy. He makes throws that you probably shouldn't make, that you probably shouldn't force, because he thinks he can make them. And and as a result of that, he throws pretty mind-blowing interceptions sometimes. I was listening earlier this week to, just analysis after analysis after analysis, and Dan Orlovsky was telling a story that, when he was in the room with Matthew Stafford, he was looking at film with him, and he just said to him, "How do you make that throw? Like, what was your decision process? Why did you make this throw?" And Stafford basically looked at him and said, "Because you can't." Like, it's a bravado thing. It's an ego thing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But Matthew Stafford is trying to make throws because he knows he can make them. But it's the Jeff Goldblum line of, you spend so much time wondering if you could, you didn't stop and think if you should. And sometimes you have to just keep the ball moving down the field, or just keep possession of the ball. Forget making the big throw to Cooper Kupp. Forget, all these things. Retaining possession. If you force an 8-yard out to Cooper Kupp, yeah, you might get a first down. You might avoid punting the ball. You might whatever. But if Cincinnati jumps in front of the ball and takes it back the other way for 6, the risk reward, I just see in my head, as much as, like I said, the numbers are telling me to look at the Rams, I just see him throwing a big pick six in this game. And I'm not saying that it cost him the game, but I could see it really keeping this game tight to the very end. The other thing about this article that stands out, the Rams had a lot of sacks in these games. Ratio-wise, a lot of their sacks actually came in these games. They had, of these 4 low DVOA games, they actually only lost 3 of them. In those 3 losses, they had 6 sacks. 6 sacks in 3 games as opposed to 25 in the other 15 games they played. It's a pretty good ratio. Not a math, not off the top of my head. I'm not really going to do that math. But it's a lot of sacks. But they allowed opponents to complete a lot of passes. The secondary wasn't taking those sacks and wasn't taking the pressure that they were getting on the quarterback. Secondary then wasn't doing their job. These losses came against Arizona, Seattle, San Francisco. DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, DeAndre Hopkins, and AJ Green all went for 60-plus yards in those games. They combined 3 games, 19 catches on 23 targets for 329 yards and 4 touchdowns. The secondary, Jalen Ramsey, who they gave draft picks for. They said they needed this guy to win a Super Bowl. He didn't do his thing. If he doesn't do his thing against Ja'Marr Chase, they're in a ton of trouble. Ja'Marr Chase puts up these kinds of numbers, the Rams are in a ton of trouble. Because that's going to open up things for T. Higgins. That's going to open up things for Joe Mixon. That completely changes the way that I'm looking at this game. I'm looking at this defensive line, this incredible defensive line. I'm looking at those 9 sacks against Tennessee a couple of weeks ago. And I'm thinking screens. I'm thinking short slants to Ja'Marr Chase. I'm thinking short, little quick routes to T. Higgins, just trying to neutralize that pass rush. But if Ja'Marr Chase is able to break free, beat Jalen Ramsey, and make big plays happen early, that changes everything. If I had to guess, I would say that LA's going to come out, doubling Chase, putting the safety over the top, only rushing 3 or 4. But if if it's T. Higgins, if it's Joe Mixon, if it's Samaje Perine with his screen that he had, late in the first half against Kansas City. If they make big plays early, that changes the whole game. That changes everything because the rush isn't going to be as heavy. They're not going to be able to rush if Cincinnati's making big plays. And you're not going to be able to add guys in coverage. It's not like, if you're blitzing, you're bringing 5 or 6 guys, routinely. You drop some of them back in coverage. But if you're not bringing those guys, if you're only bringing 3 or 4, you can't drop extra guys in coverage. So in these bad games, the rush was there. The pressure was on the quarterback. And these are, Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. These are mobile quarterbacks, but also Jimmy Garoppolo. Not really mobile, not even all that special of a quarterback. The rush was there. The secondary wasn't. And that's a major problem. If that happens on Sunday, LA's in trouble. The next thing I want to mention, this is from Doug Farrar, the editor, USA Today, NFL editor. Matthew Stafford against the Blitz this season. 16 touchdowns, no interceptions. Matthew Stafford against 4 or fewer pass rushers, 31 touchdowns, 18 interceptions. That's regular season and postseason. What this tells me is, much like I was just saying, Rams are going to want to rush 3 and drop 8 in coverage. The Bengals are going to have the same game plan, which is huge. As I mentioned earlier, Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham both went for over 100 yards in the NFC Conference Championship game. Cincinnati does not have the secondary that LA has. They don't have Jalen Ramsey. They have Eli Apple. They're going to be able to provide extra coverage, safeties over the top. They are going to put the focus on Cooper Kupp. They are going to be able to bring their best defender over to cover Odell Beckham. They are going to want to put the ball in Cam Akers' hands. Cam Akers, as amazing of a story as it is, coming back from the Achilles injury, has put the ball on the ground in this postseason. They're going to put the ball in Cam Akers' hand, or they're going to force Matthew Stafford to beat them. And Matthew Stafford, as I mentioned, he forces things sometimes. There are a lot of athletes. This is a bit of a common thing. There are a lot of athletes that when they're getting blitzed, when they need to act on instinct, they make the play. They find Cooper Kupp over the top on an all-out blitz and set up a game-winning field goal in Tampa Bay. Some guys are really, really good at that, but when they have time to think, when they need to, process all the information that comes when, the pass rush isn't quite getting there and, there's a bunch of guys in coverage when they're processing all that information. Some guys just aren't as good as that. And listen, 31 touchdowns. That's a good season. Forget the fact that he had another 16, against the blitz. 31 touchdowns is a lot, but 18 interceptions is a ton of interceptions. And I think if you were a coach, you would want your guy throwing more interceptions against the blitz when there's guys in his face. And, Cincinnati wants him to make mistakes. They want him to be throwing the ball and making mistakes when they have those guys over the top for Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham. I just looked at this and I think there's been a lot of emphasis put on the Los Angeles defensive line and how they're going to be able to take away Jamar Chase. I think Cincinnati's going to be able to do the same thing with Cooper Kupp. And Odell Beckham is better than T. Higgins, but when you're able to drop 8 men in coverage, it opens up a ton. Tyler Higbee's not playing in this game. Tight end for the Rams. They're losing an extra weapon. I don't know how the Rams are going to recover from that, because what they're going to have to do, if Cincinnati goes with 3 or 4 rushers and dropping 7 or 8 in coverage, what they're most likely going to have to do is go to the 3rd and 4th options. Find them open in zone coverage plays, or, if it's Cam Akers beating a linebacker. They're going to need Cam Akers to make plays in the passing game. And I don't know how that works out for them. Like I said, if there's no Tyler Higbee, they're going to be looking to those guys that are even behind Higbee to make plays. Will they? We're going to find out on Sunday. I say all this because I just think there's been a lot of emphasis put on the D-line of the Rams, and that they're going to be all over Joe Burrow, and Jalen Ramsey's going to make plays, and the Rams are going to blow. I've seen this a lot, that a lot of people think that the Rams are going to win this one going away. I just don't think that's going to happen, because the problem, and we saw it in Tampa Bay, if the Rams start, even if the Rams go up big, if they start to make mistakes, we've seen it before. Sean McVay kind of tightens up. Kind of loses the aggressive play calling, the offensive genius that so many people have fallen in love with with him for. He kind of shells up, and he gets conservative, and he wants to run the ball and just play mistake-free football, and that burned him in Tampa Bay. They escaped that one, by the skin of their teeth. Whether it's, Stafford's interceptions, whether it's the secondary not backing up good defensive line play, whether it's, all these things that kind of come together and make it where we've seen the Rams just not play complete football games. I just wonder what opening, what opening is Joe Burrow going to find? Because I watched that game 2 weeks ago, and I was like, man, Cincinnati has no answers for Kansas City. Defensively, they had no answers for them in the first half. And Joe Burrow just wasn't able to find the openings he needed to make plays. And then all of a sudden, Samaje Perine broke that screen, touchdown. It was 21-10. And then that weird play, Patrick Mahomes throws it to Tyreek Hill, and they don't score at the end of the first half. And the whole game shifted from there. You could say Kansas City broke down. You could say that they lost themselves, that they stopped playing like the Kansas City Chiefs. You can say all those things, and a lot of it is true. But you can't take away from Joe Burrow. You can't take away from the Cincinnati Bengals. That defense went out and made plays. They picked off Patrick Mahomes twice. Joe Burrow was making plays with his feet. He was staying away. He was not getting sacked. He threw an interception, but he bounced back. He kept his team in the game. He kept them moving. They take on his personality of... I saw a Dan Patrick interview from a couple years back, right before he got drafted. Dan Patrick says to him, do you ever have doubts? Do you ever, wonder about yourself? If you can make it at the Nets level. And he just looked at him and said, no, why would I? And that's not cockiness. That's just how I feel. Why would I doubt myself? I just succeed. And I mean, you look at his story, he never has doubted himself. Went to Ohio State, couldn't get time on the field, believed his coaches were wrong. So he went to LSU, and what did he do? He won a national championship. Got drafted first overall by his hometown Cincinnati Bengals. Brought him back to Ohio. You know, that's who this guy is. And I was listening to the game on the radio, and they interviewed Jamar Chase after the game, and he said, man, we follow our guy. We follow Joe Burrow. This team takes on his personality in those moments where they need to show resolve, and he has it in spades. He does not ever doubt that they're going to win a football game or that they are right where they want to be. And this team seems to take on that mentality when it matters most. I so badly don't want to pick the Bengals in this game. I have no dog in the fight. I'm not rooting for either team. I happen to have an affinity for both quarterbacks and both head coaches, so I'm not rooting either way. But I so badly don't want to sit here and say, well, the Bengals are going to win this game, because my head just tells me that the Rams are going to. But my gut is telling me to pick the Bengals. So who do I go with, my gut or my head? I'm going to go with my gut and say that Joe Burrow brings the Lombardi Trophy back to Cincinnati. I just think that Matthew Stafford is prone to making mistakes. And if he makes a mistake in this game, if he throws an interception, if he puts the ball on the ground, Joe Burrow's going to make him pay. Because that's what Joe Burrow's done. That's what Joe Burrow did winning a national championship. That's what he did to Ryan Tannehill. That's what he did to Patrick Mahomes, winning both those games in overtime. Or no, sorry, not overtime in Tennessee. It was going overtime, and you know they set up for the game-winning field goal after the Tannehill interception. It's what he does. It's what Joe Burrow does, and I think that's what he's going to do on Sunday. Right in Los Angeles, right in front of the Rams fans, right in front of the whole world that'll be watching on Sunday. I think Joe Burrow wins this game. I think the Bengals win this game. I think they obviously cover the points. So if you're a betting person, I would go with Cincinnati. I look at the stats and I look at it all and I just say there's something unquantifiable. There's something that you're not going to find in these, whatever. If you look at Football Outsider stats, if you look at Pro Football Reference, ESPN, doesn't matter. There's something you're not going to find here that's going to tell you what just makes Joe Burrow different. You know, you couldn't find it on Tom Brady's page. You couldn't find what was different about Brady or Peyton, or Brady or Rodgers. It's not there. There's no, other than rings. It's not something that makes those guys different. And it's not something that makes Burrow different from Stafford or Mahomes or Peyton or, whoever. But you see it. You look at him and you see it. You look at the cigar in his mouth, in the locker room after the national championship, after the division clincher earlier this year. He's a different kind of quarterback. He's a different kind of dude. He's different. And you just have to love that about him. And who knows if they take over the mantle, from Kansas City. They win the Super Bowl and they become the hot team. Or, if they've blown past Buffalo and Josh Allen already. I don't know. I don't like playing that game of, well, what does this mean long term? I think it means a lot for Matthew Stafford. I think it means a lot for Sean McVay. I think Matthew Stafford's a Hall of Famer if he wins this game. I think Sean McVay damn near has a job for life in LA if he wins this game. I just don't think they're gonna. I think they've shown me a lot. And I think that Sean McVay's experience in this game, you'd like to think if you're a Rams fan, is gonna mean a lot. But we saw it in Tampa Bay. He wasn't the same coach when they started to come back in that game. And a lot of coaches do what he did. But a lot of coaches lose big games. We've seen it with Andy Reid. We've seen it with, the famous example is Marty Schottenheimer. And a lot of coaches find ways to not win these games. And I hope that's not what we're saying about Sean McVay come Monday. But Cincinnati has that team of destiny feel. And I think they win this football game. It's there. I see it. I see the defensive game plan. I see rushing 3. Dropping 8. Forcing Matthew Stafford to make plays. Forcing Cam Akers to be a factor. Not letting Cooper Kupp or Odell Beckham make the big play. Hit the home run. And then on offense, just let Joe be Joe. We saw him. He's not particularly athletic. He made plays with his feet, though, against Kansas City. He made things happen. Samaje Perine made it happen. Joe Mixon didn't really get going in that game, but they kept running the ball on first down because they knew they had to set that up. They knew they had to run right at that defensive line and just not let them pin their ears back and pass rush. And it worked. They were able to get the ball to Chase, and they were able to get the ball to Higgins. And they did this without TJ Uzomah, who missed a ton of that game, with his injury. I see the game plan. And they don't have the best kicker in football. Obviously, we know that goes to Justin Tucker until he decides he's not the best kicker in football anymore. They have the most confident kicker in football. They have the most rock star kicker in football in Evan McPherson. If this game comes down to a kick, which we've seen these games come down to kicks many times over the years. Adam Vinatieri, how you doing? If it comes down to a kick, they got the guy. You want the ball on his foot. So, I just look at it and I say, the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be Super Bowl 56 champions hosting up that Lombardi trophy. The parade floats are going to be going through the streets of Cincinnati, not the streets of Los Angeles come Tuesday or Wednesday. So, with that said, I already mentioned my betting pick. Take Cincinnati and the points. Take the money line. I think they're going to win the football game. Take the money line. I have Odell Beckham scoring a touchdown in this game. I have the over in this game. I think this is going to be. I think there are going to be some points on the board in this one. And I would say Ja'Marr Chase is scoring a touchdown. I don't see how Joe Burrow leaves that field without getting the ball in Ja'Marr Chase's hands for 6 points. that connection that those two guys have, I think you've seen it's been at the heart of Cincinnati going from not being a very good football team to division champions to conference champions to being in this football game. That connection has been at the heart of all of it. And again, team of destiny. I see him getting in the end zone. So those would be my prop bets. Bet tails. Tails was at the heart of one of the biggest moments in this playoffs with Buffalo and Kansas City in their overtime coin toss. I got interrupted there, but I'm back. Tails was at the center. Bet tails. Why not? Super Bowl. If you're in New York like me, first Super Bowl with live legal betting on the mobile apps. Bet the coin toss. Why not? Have fun. It's our first Super Bowl with betting. Bet tails. But those are my betting picks. So, Bengals, Odell Beckham, Jamar Chase, score. Tails. Why not, right? So that's my Super Bowl preview. If I had to put a score on it, I'd say Bengals 31-24. I don't think this game comes down to a kick. I think that the Bengals win this game by a full touchdown. And I think that Joe Burrow is the Super Bowl MVP because he's Joey B. He's Joe Cool. He's everything you want your quarterback to be. He's not as talented as Rodgers. He's not as talented as Mahomes. He's not as talented as Josh Allen. But he's got the persona that wins big games. He's Tom Brady. Tom Brady was never as talented as Peyton. Never as talented as Aaron Rodgers. He's got 7 rings. He doesn't care. He doesn't care that he didn't have as big an arm as Peyton. He didn't care he wasn't as mobile as Rodgers or Russell Wilson or whoever. Got 7 rings. So I don't know. I hate making that comparison because I don't want to put that on Joe Burrow. I don't want him to, think he's Tom Brady or he needs to be Tom Brady or whoever, because nobody's Tom Brady. But, we're seeing it with Mahomes now. 4 straight conference championship games. But only 1 ring. That reputation starts to build. Okay, yeah, you got 1. But can you get another? Aaron Rodgers has been dealing with that for now a long time. And Patrick Mahomes is going to have to deal with Josh Allen every year. He's going to have to deal with Joe Burrow now every year. So I think it's very interesting. Even early in your career, Patrick Mahomes still early in his career. Joe Burrow is only in his 2nd year. What kind of resume builder this becomes, how your Hall of Fame candidacy starts to take shape. How Matthew Stafford's can be solidified in this game. That's all I got. That's my Super Bowl preview. I already started to wrap this thing up, but I'm going to do it again. That's my Super Bowl preview. Thanks for checking it out. Stay with me through the off season. We're going to have a lot of fun talking football. We're going to have some guests on. We're going to have a lot of fun with this thing. So, follow Twitter. Oh, no, it's over here. Sorry. Twitter, Instagram, FPB Pod, Field Position Battle Pod. Check us out on the podcasting apps. You can see those below in the YouTube description, in the show notes of your podcasting app. If you found us on Apple Podcasts, but you really want to listen on Overcast, it's there. Actually, it's not. Right now, we're just on Spotify, but we're coming to all those apps. So be sure to check those out. Come back to this YouTube. You'll see those links. I'm working on it. New podcast. It's hard to get in all the podcasting apps. You don't need to know all the behind the scenes stuff. You don't care. But we will be there. So be sure to check those out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Come look at my handsome face. I got all this hair going on. What's that about? I've never been a long hair guy, but I'm a long hair guy now. I like the hat. I like the look of the hat. I'm wearing this ridiculous sweatshirt. It's a ton of fun. Come check us out on the YouTube if you're listening. Subscribe. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Super Bowl Sunday. You know, the season's over. We got one more game of football before the off-season starts. Baseball's not happening, apparently, so let's just all talk about football and enjoy, you know, it's going to be free agency before you know it, draft time. I'm excited to do a draft preview. We're going to have people on talking about that. That's going to be fun. So come check it out. Next time I talk to you, it will be the Super Bowl recap, review, preview, Super Bowl review. So come check it out. Let's have some fun. The field position battle. I will talk to you later.